Hello, so today's video will be about this knife. It's a video I'm going to do at the request of one of my viewers. He was interested in knowing my opinion on the knife, so yeah, we'll get into it. Now, I do have plenty of other knives aligned there. That's pretty much the competition for this knife. They are all fighting for one space in my pocket. Fighting, yeah. So I will quickly eliminate them. Maybe we'll get back to some of them during the video for some illustration purposes. But yeah, so this one has spent almost a year and a half in my pocket. This one the same. This one has spent actually 2 days in my pocket, and that was it for it. I just got that one, so it's now it's taking some time in my pocket, just because I'm handling it to see how I feel with it and how I feel about it. But I already determined that that's only an indoor knife for me, so that will be pretty much something that will spend time in my pocket at home. Only if I forget to take it out and replace it with this one or that one when I leave home, I will find myself having that one with me. Otherwise, this is my indoor knife. And this one has 0 time in my pocket, and I don't see it having some soon. I have it for a few years now, but a coated blade, it's kind of a no-no for me. I don't like coated blades. It was the only option at the moment when I bought it for a Kruger from Benchmade. So yeah, I have it, but no. I do have, however, its little brother that has spent some time in my pocket. I also modified this. Also have a personal relationship with it right now, because kind of took a bite of my knee. So yeah, but the big brother, no, the big brother is not gonna see time in my pocket. And then these two are left. So these are my main two. This was my favorite knife for a long time. It has more than a couple of years in my pocket. The same this one. This one I mostly have it, I had it at home and in the outdoors, just because it's assisted. This one is the one I take to the city, so whenever I'm going out, this is the one I have with me. And then there is this guy here, which has his own purpose, and I do have this in my pocket sometimes, especially when I'm fishing and I'm looking for ultralight carry, and I do want to have a big blade that's lockable. You have to depress the shield there to be able to unlock it, and I do want to have a big saw. That's the one that I will have in my pocket. So yeah, that will be as an overview. Now we'll take some of them out of here, or maybe not necessarily, we'll see. Let's move them away for the moment and talk about the start of the show for today, and that will be this guy. So Microtech Amphibian, I have the aluminum handle one. That was pretty much what I knew I wanted right from the beginning. So to give you guys some perspective, I spend lots of time in the outdoors, and in the outdoors, one thing you want is to have something you can rely upon. Now, that most of the time will be something like this, yeah, fixed blade, full tank, and good ergonomics. So if you have to have this in your hands for a long time and work with it, you won't feel it. However, like many other people, I am also guilty on always having a pocket knife, and turns out that that pocket knife is also the one I tend to use for most tasks, just because I'm used to it. I know where it is. It's like a convenient thing, yeah. So my hand goes automatically to the pocket to extract my pocket knife every time I need to do a task with a knife. So it has to be like will effort if you want to go to a fixed blade when I need something to do in the outdoors and not use my pocket knife. But most of the times this is the one that will take the use. Now in the outdoors, with use you will also get abuse, because lots of the tasks will be related to food preparation most of the time at camp and stuff like that, or some type of woodworking. Every time you mention woodworking, that means stress for a blade. If you want to split it, it will be stress, because the wood may want to split in kind of a wavy form, and then we'll put different pressure points on the blade, and that will put stress on the blade. You may want to do some carving, so if you do this carving motion, yeah, every time you go like that, you put pressure sideways on the blade, yeah, and that will translate directly to the pivot as well. So you don't want to have a weak knife with you. Most of the times you have to look for something with a very strong pivot and as less weak points as you can have on the blade. Now second will be ergonomics. So once you start doing some serious work in the outdoors, especially woodworking, you will start feeling every single problem on your knife's handle. And if you can see on this handle of this knife, I kept it on purpose like this, especially for this video. And you can see on one hand, on one side, it's kind of shiny on places and worn off, and on the other side looks a little bit better, more like new but not new. And that will be for me to show you some hot spots. Unfortunately, this knife is full of them. So it has good ergonomics when it comes to the shape of the handle, general shape of the handle, so fits the hand very, very well. I have a medium size hand, so not a big hand, but if you look at my grip now, you can see that pretty much I covered the entire handle if I use something like a power grip, yeah. if I choke it and use the finger choil and put some pressure on the blade, I have quite a bit left out of my handle there. Now, one big problem with this knife is that it was designed for gloves, for tactical gloves, and all those big jimpings that come all over the knife will pretty much chew up your skin. We'll come back to this as well. So besides the jimping, you have sharp transition edges. So I don't know how well you can see this, but that transition there, that angle is sharp. It's like very sharp. Let's see if I can show it on a piece of wood here. So that's how sharp it is, yeah. And I did not do too much of a, yeah. And when this is in contact with your skin all the time, believe me, you will notice it in a blink of an eye. This is why on the other side I kind of grinded down that. Not too much yet, I'm working on it, so this knife is still a work in progress. I'm still working on it. I'm trying to assess and determine the right amount of grinding I need to do on this in order to, you see, it's a different story there. In order to have it functional for bare hands, I'm a guy that doesn't really like gloves. So I don't like wearing gloves. I usually, most of the time, I'll have my bare skin on anything I'll grip. And for that reason, I don't want to develop big calluses and blisters on my hands. So I'm trying to make the objects I use fit my needs, yeah. So I've got to this point where I'm kind of, for the moment, satisfied with the result. So it's not as sharp as it used to be. I kind of dulled it down. I don't feel it as much in the hand anymore, but still I kind of managed to preserve a bit of the look of the knife, because we have to admit we are all guilty of it. Look comes a lot into play when we talk about our knife choices. So if it looks good and steals our heart, then most likely it's something that we will use and buy and use and have some pleasure out of that. But looks is not everything. So you do have to keep in mind that it's primarily a tool that is meant to be used, so you have to do what you need to do in order to make it usable. Now the biggest problem of this knife, it's right there. So when it comes from the factory, here it's kind of way pointy. I will invite you, because I don't have a second one to compare, I will invite you to look at pictures with a brand new Microtech Amphibian, and you'll see that this point here will actually be into a point more like something like this Bradford here, yeah. And that little sucker, it's a pain in the hand. So and it was for me right from the beginning, and that was the first thing to go down. As soon as I got the knife, I grinded down that spike there, that point. Yeah, it's meant for thrusting. However, I'm not one of those guys who uses their knife to thrust into anything. I mostly use it for slicing, carving, and maybe light chopping. So thrusting, it's something that I maybe do once or twice in a year, which for me it's not justified to have specific stabbing kind of features on my knife. So yeah, so that was the first thing that went off. I grind it down. It was so the problem with that spike was, besides the fact that it was pointy, it had jimping right before it, and it came down to a very thin material there, which was kind of digging into your hand. So on this type of grip, yeah, you won't notice that. It's most people won't even know it's there. But if you do, you want to use the chest grip, yeah, to do some actually power carving. Guess what? That little spike gets exactly into your palm there, into the base of your thumb, yeah. So that will dig in. So that will dig in like there is no tomorrow. So no, that's what, as soon as I realized that, for me, that was the first thing to go off. Also, if you want to do kind of a stab in some material and pull motion, the same thing, that spike over there would have been on kind of on the heel of my palm there, so that will be again digging into my hand. So that was not something that I would have on any of my knives. Any of the knives that I use. Those that I keep just for show or just because they have a feature that I like, maybe. Second, so actually this was actually the first modification, because it's the easiest to do. I took down the thumb studs. As you can see, I have my little bag of thumb studs and spare parts from knives. These are the original thumb studs from this knife. That's a feature that, if there will be one feature I will eliminate from any and all knives, that will be the thumb studs. For me, that's just something extra on the blade that will prevent the knife to fulfill its actual purpose. That means cutting. So most of the thumb studs will be at the base of the blade, and that's the exact part of the blade that you use for power cuts. So every time you want to do some power cut, you will go close there, yeah. So if you want to put power on something, you want to have it as close to your pivot as possible to translate as much of your force that you are generating into there, because the farther away on the blade you go, the more leverage you will have working against you. So the force applied here will be multiplied by the length of the blade up to the pivot. So you will feel it way strongly on your wrist, yeah. And that's something you don't want to have. So that means that any power cuts, anything that you have to put power into, should be done right next to the handle. Now on this type of knives that have finger choice or sharpening choice, that's also a limiting factor, yeah, because that doesn't cut. But what you are aiming for is just the beginning of the cutting side of the blade. Yeah. Now it just so happens that in most of the knives that will be aligned with the thumb stud. So that means if you want to do a power cut, and there are types and types of power cuts. So there is a power cut that you go tip first and you go kind of that way, you slide that way towards the handle, and there are power cuts that you go handle first and then you go like that, and maybe some rotation as well. Both cases will end up with material kind of hitting the thumb stud and preventing you from doing the cut. Now another thing with thumb studs is they tend to collect gunk, and it will make it hard to clean as well. And if you use the knife in field dressing and you leave some raw meat and raw, I don't know, organic material there, and then use your knife for preparing a meal or something, you may have some cross contamination with some bacteria that will develop there, and that will be translated to your food. So that's a no-no for me. So thumb studs, no. It's one feature of the knives that you can see pretty much all of my knives that come with thumb studs from the factory, they will have them removed. So that's first thing when I buy a knife, I will remove the thumb studs. I understand that for some people it's fidgety factor and ease of deployment. It doesn't work like that for me. So once you have one method of deployment for any folding knife, that should be enough. Yeah, and that in crossbar style locks will be the lock itself. It's nothing easier than this, and I don't like when thumb studs will dig into the tip of my thumb there. Yeah, so even with those that are a bit stickier, it's still the preferred way for me to do. Yeah, so no, thumb studs, it's a no-no. I used to like flippers a lot. The problem is with flippers, you don't see them into crossbar lock, and that will be the main lock I use these days. Something like this, like a frame lock, if you use it with wood, sorry about that, I'm still recovering after that flu. When you carve, you have to do that rolling motion, and that rolling motion most of the time you'll do it from here, and this part locks exactly into the bar that it's also your lock. So it happened to me that I actually disengaged the lock on both of these knives, that one and this one just as well, and that was the end of me buying frame locks. No more. I learned my lesson the hard way, so no more frame locks or subframe locks like this Kershaw has. Yeah, this is the bare knuckle, and I bought this specifically for the shape of the blade. I really liked this blade. But back to Amphibian. So one thing that made me consider this as my companion was the hardware. So I do have strong hardware. I have strong pivot. I have plenty of joining points between the two sides of the scales. Yeah. So then I do have the liners, which besides the fact that I have strong liners, they are also partially nested in there. Partially nested means, doesn't mean much from an aesthetic point of view necessarily, but that's a perfect way to keep those liners in place. They will not move around because they are integrated in the contour there. You can see it inside as well. So there is no room for movement for those liners. And I have 3 points of security plus the pivot on the lock itself. So when you put pressure on the blade from top down, it will tend to fold, yeah, towards folding the knife. That bottom part of the blade will push upwards against the lock, and that will push upwards against whatever is behind that lock to reinforce it. And this lock, besides the fact that it's not just a simple bar, and if you've seen early videos from the Benchmade when they were doing testing for crossbars, that can bend in time, or the actually part that reinforces the lock just on top of the lock will break. Now this is pretty much Thor's hammer there, that has enough friction because it's a wide part there. It's not just a narrow barrel there. It is a long part that makes a lot of contact, and that being the case, it will distribute force for a larger area on the top of the lock there, yeah, on both sides, and equally. So, and when I have 3 screws, and they are T8 screws, so strong screws, big enough axles, and 3 of them to keep everything together, that will not give the chance for this lock to fail easily. There were some problems at the beginning just because they did not allow for enough room in the front of the lock to kind of go on top of the blade. And once that was solved, this is, in my opinion, the strongest lock right now. Maybe just that, and comparable with the back lock or even with the triad lock of cold steel. So, but for me, this is a lock that will not fail. Yeah. Another reason for which I like crossbar style knives is that just in case this spring will fail, I can always jam something behind the lock here to prevent it from moving backwards. Yeah. And if this cannot travel, that blade, it's always immobilized. So that's another thing I like a lot about this knife. So it's very strong. It has a very strong construction. It pretty much, you can abuse this knife and it will take it smiling or proudly. Now, one thing I did not like, so that was another modification I've done. And look again at the pictures with the new amphibians. So Tony Morfione did a very nice thing with the design on this knife, with one exception. So if you look at these knives, all the lines of this knife are curved in one way or the other. You don't find any straight line on the knife. Now on mine you won't find any at all, but if you look at the new amphibian, you will see that in fact let's see, kind of, what can I put it? This part here, it was actually a straight line, yeah? So from point to point, it kind of, so I kind of eliminated whatever is in the gap there, yeah? So it used to be a straight line, which made the blade just a bit wider, the point of the knife less usable. I use this when I open joints in while butchering something, and I use it also to gut fish with my knife. I do that as well, and it's, for me it's important to be able to go where I need and then do my work. And a big wide blade like that with a straight line there was, first it was a pain for my eyes. It took me a while until I realized what exactly is not well with that design, and also is less useful for me. So that was the second. Then I realized it while looking at some Orpheonic custom knives, amphibians, and those had these more like a Persian, like a clip point style blade, and said I then said, okay, this is exactly what's wrong with this knife. It needs to be more like that, and curvy, and not that straight line. So that was the third modification I've done to it. So I've grinded down that line into more like a clip point style, and now it's a bit more similar with the crooked river here from Benchmade. Yeah, this was also highly modified. So yeah, and yeah, this is the pair of knives that are in my pocket when I leave home, whenever I leave home, and in the outdoors, and sometimes I take it in the city as well, but most of the time in the city I have this one with me. So those are my thoughts on the Amphibian. It's a very nice knife. It's a strong knife. It has a strong blade. By the way, this is the sharpest knife I ever got as a brand new knife. So when this arrived and I did some tests on it, cutting tests, I was amazed. So it doesn't compare even with the Spyderco. This was actually a disappointment in sharpness when I got it. This is the 15V, the Sprint Run, the military too. By the way, it's a bit larger than the Amphibian, but not by much. It did not compare with any Benchmade, any other knives. So this was a testament of what a sharp knife can mean when they come from the factory. Yeah. So yeah, this is it was scary sharp indeed, and because it's also heavy knife and heavy blade, so that guillotine blade being scary sharp gave me some chills at the beginning, but once I've got used to it, now it's part of my routine to play with it sometimes. Yeah, so also now I have this one since October, so I've been using it every day pretty much since then. I've sharpened it. One thing that I noticed is that also this M390 will sharpen the M390 MK Microtech variant of M390 will sharpen easier than something like this M390, or sorry, about other M390 I have some in the fixed blades, so it did not compare. It's easy to sharpen, easy to get to a scary sharp edge, and easy to maintain that, so it holds the edge for a long time. And the only other problem that I have with this one is, and it's a problem and not a problem in the same time. So I do like big knives and I do like heavy knives, but this is at the top of the weight in a knife that I will ever have. I will not be having heavier knives, pocket knives, than this one. It's at the very top there. Let's see how heavy is it, but 170 grams, and that will be 5.9 ounces. So you feel this in your pocket, especially if you are wearing shorts or something like that. You'll notice that this will tend to undress you, but otherwise it's very nice to use that weight when you do light chopping. So if you grip it all the way in the back and do some chopping with it, that weight will also help. So yeah, you have some, you give and take, yeah, give some, take some, and you have to decide for yourself. But for the moment, it's not necessarily my grail knife, but is the knife that's closest to what I'm looking for in a knife. Previously was this knife, so for the longest time I was looking for, because it was discontinued, so I was looking for a backup for this knife, because this was my favorite pocket knife, and I'm arguably may still be. The only thing I don't like about this is the fact that it is assisted. So I don't trust assisted mechanisms. I opened this one up and I tried to de-assist it. I realized that once you take down that spring, this knife behaves like the worst gas station knife you can buy. And then I put it back exactly how it was, and I still have it assisted. It has the secondary lock, but still assisted is not a no-no for me. I'm for manual knives. I like to be in control of my knives. It will not open without my will, and it will not close without my will. And always a knife I will carry, I have to be able to open it and close it with one hand and with either of my hands. Yeah, so in the outdoors you never know when you can find yourself injured, and then you have to operate your knife with the other hand, and if you are not able to do that, it's useless to you. It's just a piece of dead weight in your pocket. And yeah, so all in all, so a quick recap. So very sharp, holds an edge very well, comes with very good hardware, is very strong, very well built, comes with sharp points, features like the thumb stud, which I don't like. I immediately remove it. You can operate it without if you want. And then a bad design with that straight line on the top of the blade, but that's my opinion. Your mileage may vary. And yeah, other than that, it's a good companion to have. Thank you very much for your attention and have a good one.